Right, hi guys, welcome to the third lesson on this Flask tutorial. Today we'll be talking about defining HTTP methods and static files within your Flask application. So before we start, what are HTTP methods? These are actions that define how a client interacts with a browser or interacts with an API client, and these actions could be posts, gets, puts, patch, or delete method, and each of the method has a specific action that it does. Hopefully I'll make another video explaining the different HTTP methods, but for now let's just focus on this. Now, for you to make a request of or for you to play around with HTTP method in Flask, you first of all need to call Flask need to call request from your Flask application. So remember how I said that we should create a route, so we can create a route and define our paths. Now, for you to define a method, the HTTP method in Flask, you define it by calling the method function. So you say method equals to, and then you define the type of method you want to pass. So in this example, or in this route, we are playing around with the post method. Now in Flask, you can define more than one method. So if you want to define another method, all you just have to do is add a comma and then you define the next method. If you still want to play around and add the put and delete, it's entirely up to you, but let's just focus on the post and get method. So let us define a login function. We have already created a login function, and in this login function, it's checking that if the method type that we would be playing around with is posts, then it should get the data in a JSON format. And once it gets that data, it should return that post request has been received and the data it's got. But if it's not a post request, it should throw a message that get request was received. Now, in case you are wondering what's this 200 after the return statement is that the 200 is the status code. Again, I would be talking more about status code in another video. So this is what your function should do. And for us to test that out, our application, and it should give us this. So we go over here, hash login, because that was, sorry, it wasn't login. The part that we define is API. Apologies. And it said it gets request was received because we are not passing anything, so we hit the gets request. So let us try making a post request using Postman. So you can download Postman. The link to download it would be in the video description. So now we are accessing the URL, this part here, and instead of get, we will do a post. Now if you send the request, it should throw an error. It should throw an error which says did not attempt to load a JSON data. Now for you to load the JSON data, you can click on body. Let me just pick this border. You click on body and you click on raw. Now when you click on raw, it goes to text, so you just click on JSON and you can decide to make your request here. So when we send this, it should show us our data which was on the request body and a message that says post request has been received. So this is a good way or a nice way for you to see how you can define your HTTP method and interacts with your routes using a post and a get request. Now, for those of you that are probably wondering why did this say that get request was received, the reason is when you click any URL on when you click any URL like this, we just clicked this, what we are making is a get request, and a get request is mostly used to retrieve information. So that was what we did, hence this message. But when we are passing something through the request body like we did here, we used a post request. So you can also play around with puts, with deletes, with patch. If you notice here, there are so many. There's head, there's option, but usually you would make use of get, post, puts, and delete. These are the four methods that you would mostly use in your since you're very new to this. Right, so let's talk about static files and rendering templating. So first of all, let's talk about static files. So static files in Flask, or static files in general, or I think in Python, they mostly comprise of your CSS and your JavaScript. You know, that thing that makes your website look a bit more, to give it more color, more flair, stuff like that. So those are the static files. Rendering templates is when you decide to display HTML templates in your Flask application, because Python was not really built to generate HTML, but thanks to application like Flask, we can render or we can generate HTML templates. So now, if you want to generate a HTML template, let's say you have an index.html that has this. Now, if you want to render this HTML in your Flask application, you would have to use the render templates package gotten from Flask, and you would need to do, let's give it a new route, and then in our function we would call the render templates, which we got from Flask. We will call the render templates, and we will define our index.html that we already have here. Now when we run this application and try to access the templates, to access the template paths, it shows us an error, templates not found. Now why is this? In Ginger templating, we need to always define our HTML templates within a HTML within a folder called templates. So we can create a folder here, name that templates, and move our index.html here. Now when you run this again, it should show you your HTML templates. So this is how you can render your HTML template within your Flask application. Now when it comes to static files, when you are dealing with static files in Flask, the best way to create a static file, similarly to how we had to create a templates folder for our index.html, we have to create a folder called static, and this static is where we would define our CSS or our JavaScript if our project has any JavaScript. In the next video, we would see how we would render a HTML template and how we can use CSS to style the template a bit within our Flask application. So if you found this video helpful, do well to like, subscribe, comment, and thank you for watching till the end of the video. Happy coding.